want you to notice Luke 18 and verses 6 through 8. We already read verses 6 and 7, but I want us to notice the flow now. Luke 18 verses 6 through 8. Then the Lord said, hear what the unjust judge said. And shall God, who is the judge, by the way, not avenge over whom? The adversary, right? Shall God not avenge his own elect, that's the widow, who cry out day and night to him, though he bears long, there you have the delay, though he bears long with them. And then comes the answer. I tell you that he will what? Avenge them speedily. So even though there's a delay, is God going to intervene and avenge his elect over the adversary? And he's going to do it speedily. The Bible says yes. And then notice how the passage ends. Nevertheless, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith in the earth? What is Jesus saying? He's saying, nevertheless, when I come, am I going to find this kind of faith that this widow had on the earth? And the parable ends. Now the question is, when does this parable especially apply in human history? Well, we need to look at the context. And I'm just going to not read the verses because there's too many of them. But if you look at the verses that come immediately before the parable, which would be Luke chapter 17 and verses 26 to 37, all of those verses are talking about the second coming of Jesus. And if you read the last verse that we just read from the parable, it says, nevertheless, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith in the earth? The parable concludes by reference to the second coming. So the question is, when does this parable especially apply to? There's no doubt that it applies especially to the time of the second coming of Christ, because the passage that comes before the parable is talking of the second coming. The parable ends by asking the question, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on the earth? And so we know that this parable, in between the two passages that talk about the second coming, is referring to the crisis that will take place at the end of time. Now let's review the symbols. The judge represents God. The adversary represents Satan. The widow symbolizes the church. What kind of church? Just the church in times of peace like today, where everybody has plenty? Absolutely not. It's the church in dire straits. The church of the end time, the church of the tribulation, we're going to notice. And yet we notice that there's a delay. But after the delay, what does God do? God answers the pleas of his people. Now the question is, what is this parable really referring to in terms of time? Folks, I have no doubts whatsoever that Jesus is here speaking about the terrible time of tribulation that is going to fall upon this earth. It's going to be a time of trouble such as never has been seen in the history of the world. And only those who have the patience of the saints will stand before the beast and his image and will refuse the mark even on pain of death. They will not be immediately delivered. There will be a delay. They will have to go through this time of trouble, lose everything that they have, and yet they will not cease to come to God in prayer and to plead for his blessing and to plead for his protection and to plead for his presence with them. By the way, most Christians are expecting a pre-tribulation rapture.